for your patience. We've had some technical difficulties this afternoon. We're going to call to order the Los Osos Groundwater Basin Management Committee meeting for May 29th, 2026. We'll start with roll call.
Director Sosena?
Here.
Director Gibson? Director Reinecke?
Here.
Chair Zimmer?
Here.
All parties present.
Go to item 3, pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on. Item 4, board member comments.
I don't know if this is, I think it's the only appropriate time, the only time to take a moment to mention something that I plan to do on the 11th of next month. I will not be representing this board unless we decide there's a special meeting that's needed for a letter or something. But I plan to attend a Coastal Commission appeal for a home that's been authorized. Based on the staff report, because I think that there's just some things that coastal staff does not understand. And I know we sent our growth rate recommendation letter to coastal. Maybe it was too complicated because it's really not that complicated. There are 2 technical memorandums after the transient model to pay attention to. The baseline scenario that says that if you keep doing what you're doing, pumping 1,800 acre feet a year, you will not stop saltwater intrusion. The second one talked about how to get to the 2,000 acre feet per year sustainable yield, expending a bit of money over the next 5 years. So we're not at 2,000 acre feet, as indicated in the staff report. The third thing that's forgotten is the buffer, the 20% buffer, which would drop our goal to 1,600 acre feet. So this references 1,700 acre feet a year when we've been using 18. 16 is really what we're after. There's so much misinformation here that I intend to go as an individual. I will not be identifying myself as speaking for this board, but I will be a member, identifying myself that way. But this is just over and over again, misinformation. It's a lack of understanding about where we're at with the basin. So I just wanted everyone to know that. And I wouldn't mind other support.
Yeah.
I do have one question on that. What is this related to? What is the appeal specifically for in this case?
Oh, let's see. It was a single family residence, unincorporated. Not sure if the address is here, and I'm not sure it matters. And I'm not sure if it's even one of the wait list properties that are in prohibition zone. It could be, an old one from outside of all of that. Kobe Lane? I don't remember.
Okay, so I think for myself and maybe others in the room too, just to have a full understanding of the issue that you're bringing to the forefront right now is that before the Coastal Commission, there's going to be an appeal related to a residential development. And in their understanding, it appears that the Coastal Commission has some faulty information related to our basin. And you're going to be there to provide comment to hopefully correct the record.
I think they're misinterpreting the information. Well, they're neglecting some of it. The buffer, the 20% buffer, never mentioned anywhere. And the fact that 2,000 acre feet is a goal that we could reach in 5 years with an expenditure and some capital improvements. It's not the number that works for now, the baseline scenario touches on that. That says the 1,800 acre feet a year will not stop saltwater intrusion. And there's some discussion about just how far it comes in, but you know,
I, for one, think that that's an important distinction that should be elevated. I would personally be able to provide support on that. So I'll say that again, you know, as a personal citizen of the community, not so much as a BMC member per se, but.
yeah, thank you. You know, it's a basic misunderstanding of the basic numbers that we're using to try and manage the basin.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to clarify that misunderstanding, which is not a misunderstanding by the Coastal Commission, and we do have Mr. Harris here. This board unanimously approved a safe yield of 2,000 acre feet a year based on continuing the existing pumping pattern for 5 years and then shifting to an optimized pumping pattern. It was understood that it was going to take some time to do it. The calculation of 2,000 understands that, accepts that, and has been validated by a registered hydrologic engineer or appropriately registered expert. The Coastal Commission had, as we pointed out, when the letter regarding the water purveyor's objection to the county's move forward on the update to the LCP and the issuance of will serves, had previously received that same letter. They have extensively reviewed the technical information underlying the water supply and found this basin not to be in overdraft, and that the issuance of those permits not a threat to coastal resources. And finally, every project that the Board of Supervisors, the County of San Luis Obispo, approves for construction in Los Osos is subject to a 2-to-1 retrofit that has been studied in a technical memorandum of a few years ago to show that that actually saves more than 1-to-1. So you certainly, I have no objection to any individual going forward, but I think it's useful to just set the expectation that the Coastal Commission is well aware of the technical underpinnings by which the county decided to move forward and continue to issue permits. I was unable to get I have a Wi-Fi connection now, I guess, unable to see the staff report on that, but my guess is that you're going to see the Coastal Commission staff recommend denying the appeal on the basis of analyses they've done many, many times before. So I just want to make sure that that's on the record. There is, and particularly to understand the exact methodology by which this board, again, unanimously last year set 2,000 acre feet as the safe yield of the basin. So thank you.
There's still the 20% buffer that's continually ignored.
And that's a target that we, with the revised safe yield, don't meet at this point. We have a number of potential projects that would get us to that. Again, that does the Coastal Commission is well aware of the management objective and does not find that the basin is in overdraft, nor that the issuance of will serve letters to serve new development under the retrofit to build ordinance threatens any coastal resources. So that's, again, folks welcome to take that individually to the Coastal Commission hearing, and we'll see what they say. But I don't expect that they're going to render a different decision than they have in the past on this.
So to your point though, Chuck, I think what I'm understanding is that there's policies and procedures put in place, and it sounds like Supervisor Gibson is explaining that those are being followed and met,
Correct.
but there may be some conditions that we want to address here as a board to change those, that a lot of those policies are set because of some of the decisions we made on past information that we've received. And we got to remember that we just have the transient model late last year, made decisions, but we have that round of decision making is coming up again. And I think that's the time to really address those.
And that all starts with the annual report, the release of the annual report. So
Yes.
yeah, we're starting that cycle again. Thank you for that reminder.
All right. Sounds good. Any other comments? Thank you for that, Chuck.
I sort of have a comment slash question, and I'm trying to recall without pulling it up myself, but is the 80% that is in our Basin plan, is that also in the stipulated judgment that we are to target 80%, or is this strictly in the Basin plan?
That,
It's the growth.
that is a management objective. The intent is for this committee to take the necessary actions such that the basin yield metric sits at 80% or below. The attainment or non-attainment of that is written into the growth management ordinance of the county with a 5-year or 3-year or some number of years roll in. That ramps it up to 1%. And it's in the current year, the Board of Supervisors late last year looked at our ability to go from a 0.4% growth rate to a 0.6% growth rate and decided not to raise the growth rate based on questions yet to be answered. We didn't feel that 0% was appropriate and respectfully disagree with the opinions that were expressed by the water purveyors. So we continued it at 0.04% under a 2-to-1 retrofit. The Coastal Commission reviewed all of that reasoning and saw no need to intervene on the question of the county going forward. And if you look at the staff report, some of you may be familiar with the Coastal Commission's process on appeal. It's a 2-step process, and the staff recommendation in this report is that there is no substantial issue in the appeal.
I'm getting a little concerned we're getting a little far afield on an unagendized item. I think, as the one of board member comments or make brief comments, project status updates and communications. Great discussion, but I'd be more comfortable if we agendize this for a future meeting.
Thanks, Dan. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll go to public comment.
If you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand and we will take any public comments in the boardroom first.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, and this is general public comment for items not on the agenda. Is that right?
No, it's comment on the board comments.
Oh, the board.
Yeah.
Board comments.
Yeah.
Well, I'll reserve my time for the public comment.
Patrick McGibney, the Sustainability Group, and thank you, Chuck. I will be commenting on things not on the agenda regarding this issue, but Beth, to answer your question, the stipulated judgment, the courts approved the Basin Plan. And in the Basin Plan, there's an 80% or 20% buffer. So in the court's approval of that, you might as well say it's in the stipulated judgment also. I mean, that they approved that. They're saying this is the way you're going to be doing it. Okay, let's do it that way. So I hope that answers that question. Chuck, I appreciate you coming out with this. We are going to be appealing this, and I will be commenting on that, as I say, in a couple minutes with that. Things that Mr. Gibson has said, though, regarding the county. The information that the Coastal Commission has been given is using metrics that aren't approved by the Department of Water Resources. And I think that's something that needs to be considered here. The county has been skewing the information that they've been giving the Coastal Commission, and I don't think that's been appropriate or appreciated. So I'll comment on that in a minute too.
Becky McFarland, Los Osos, concerned citizen. Thank you, water purveyors. I mean, it was like a miracle to hear you guys say 0% growth and just same old with the county. And it's really upsetting. And we find it just appalling that our county government doesn't care about our water enough. You can say they care, but from what we're seeing, they don't. When you have three water purveyors all saying the same thing, and then the board turns around and goes against it, they still are ignoring the fact that that 0.4 or 0.4 or whatever the growth number is, does not include 2-bedroom, 1-bath guest houses, of which there is no limit to the number that can be built. They are not required to do the Title 19 retrofits, and that also includes home offices. Home offices can be 2 bedrooms with 1 bath and a wet bar. They're going up around town. So it's a fallacy, it's a farce to say that they're sticking to any kind of growth ordinance, because they're not. We've been watching them go up. There's at least 8 that have gone up in the last few years. Those units use water. Those units are not code enforced to see if they're being used full time. They're not checked to see if they're vacation rentals. And again, because our code enforcement relies on neighbors, thinking on neighbors, it's on us to cause those kind of problems. And I resent that. You know, I try to be a good neighbor and get along with everyone and support my community, but I don't want to go around thinking on people whose children grew up with my children because the county allowed this egregious thing to happen in our town. So thank you, water purveyors. Thank you for faithfully serving on this board and trying to do the right thing. I know you work at it, but we have problems. And seeing the big thumb of our governor on the Coastal Commission and the way they respond to things now is just, you know, it makes you give up hope. But I'm not that kind of person. I try to remain optimistic, but with our county government and the state government against us, and actually saying we are not in overdraft when the Department of Water Resources says we are, is just beyond belief. Thank you again for serving here.
All right, looks like there are no further public comments in the boardroom and there are none online, so we will take it back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, we have no special presentation. Item 6, consent agenda. We have 2 items. A, approval of the financial reports, and B, approval of the minutes from the March 18th, 2026 BMC meeting. We have public comment on our consent?
All right, if you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you are online, please raise your hand and we will take public comment in the boardroom first.
Good afternoon. My name's Robert Garfield, and I'm a resident of Cabrillo Estates. I've been working with the committee for the last over a year to understand better the issues behind either continuing with the on-site.
Robert, I'm gonna pause you 1 second because we're on the consent agenda. So the next item's the public comment that I think you're gonna make that presentation. All right, thank you.
All right, there are no further public comments in the boardroom and there are none online, so we will bring it back to the board.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board.
I'll move approval of consent.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, now we're gonna move to item 7, public comment, not appearing on the agenda.
If you would like to make a public comment for items not appearing on the agenda, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand. We will take any public comments in the boardroom first.
Okay, I'm back.
Still Robert Garfield.
So now that I have a little extra time, I'll pick up where I left off. I worked with a group of residents of Cabrillo Estates for about a year and almost a year and 3 months on this issue to understand better what our options were and what it was all about. We understand that we were outside of the prohibition zone. And so we were in brand new territory on this issue. We did some work. We contacted the Rose Foundation first to see if we could get a grant to do a study, preliminary study on the cost and what it would look like to have the sewer put into Cabrillo Estates. And we submitted that to the county as a first step. So we understood better what it would mean. And we did some other things. We had meetings, several meetings with the members of the community, and finally did a straw poll that represented about 75% of the people said they would support moving to the sewer. So what I just wanted to come today and just appreciate your committee's work, but I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about some thoughts where we currently stand. As of yesterday, or the 5th, when the board had action, we still have to go back to the community and talk about our options. But in general, the future is either we continue with the on-site treatment works, OSTWs, or we go to the sewer. And just some perspective on if we continue with the on-site treatment works. There's now about 4, maybe 5 houses in Cabrillo Estates that have the on-site treatment works. 2 of them, I believe, are new buildings, new structures. The rest have happened over the last couple of years. So there are 236 homes in Cabrillo Estates. If we do, let's say, for example, 10 of these lose their leach fields a year, that would mean it would take 23 years to completely change Cabrillo Estates to on-site treatment works. If that happens, yes, we would have the treatment of nitrates. But my understanding is that that treatment is only gets rid of 50% of the nitrates. It doesn't get rid of them all. So we would still have nitrates in the system. That's a concern for everybody. It's a concern for the groundwater. It's a concern for this committee. The second issue is, and I'll be very brief, is what we do about the future. The issue now is forever chemicals. You probably heard of this, PFAS, which has a significant problem with so many plastics that are in the community. And what we do with that is if we continue as our own treatment works, rather than going to the sewer system. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was written in more logical order than being broken up in 79. It includes things for both of them and things.
Hi, Lynette Brooks. I'm actually using agenda item 7 to talk about things that are not in the annual reports, but probably should be. Title corrections must be made for all water levels. It never mentions if those are made in the annual reports, especially for the water levels used for the water level metric and the upper aquifer water level profile. The contour maps, especially for the lower aquifer, could also be misleading without title corrections. Changes to water levels can range from more than 70% of the tide range in wells located a few hundred feet from a tidally influenced water body to less than 5% in wells a mile or more from the tidally influenced surface water body. During the days of water level collection in April 2025, tide at Port St. Louis varied from a high of 5.9 feet to a low of negative 0.8 feet. Water levels near the bay could change as much as 4.7 feet during this time. Similar tidal fluctuations existed in October 2025 and affected the fall water level measurements. A comparison of year-to-year changes and determining if the protection profile is above the safety level is completely meaningless unless tidal corrections are made. All previous data needs to be corrected so that year-to-year comparisons can be made. Monitoring should be expanded to include continuous recording of either specific conductance or chloride concentration in several wells. This became especially apparent in 2025 when water levels in July were much lower than during the spring or fall measurements. Chloride concentrations could have been higher in July of 2025 than were measured in spring and fall. Continuous monitoring would show what the chloride concentration is during the months with more pumping and less rainfall. It is possible that the 250 milligram per liter line is moving inward during that time and violating the threshold limit for intrusion. Continuous monitoring would provide data to determine preferential flow paths for intrusion, and it would provide more data for model refinement, especially when using the model as a pumping optimization tool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I'm a 50-year resident of Los Osos, and I've been a student of the groundwater basin for virtually that entire time. We're all trying to understand the groundwater basin. It's a moving target, and certainly a work in progress. The understanding revolves a lot around numbers, and I'd like to go over a few numbers with you. As a reminder, in 1990, with the same population virtually, the water purveyors produced 2,390 acre feet that year. It's about 150 gallons per capita per day. That's what it equates to. Today, we're at 1/3 of that in terms of per capita use, and 1,061 acre feet was the 2025 production. I don't know if you remember, but when the Basin Plan was approved, we were at 2,400 acre feet for our safe yield and gradually worked up to 2,760. Today, we find ourselves at 2,000, a jump of 760 acre feet down. I'm not sure I fully understand how we got here. Coincidentally, with the current production of 1,680 acre feet, and using 2,000 acre feet as the safe yield, we come up with a basin yield metric of 84, basically, which is 0.2% in Title 26. That's 12 units. You've talked about zero. I'd like to remind you, not one permit has been issued for a single family or multifamily home. We have 25 pending at this point. If we had 10 years worth of 25 units a year, that's multi and single family, that would equate to 35 acre feet of demand. And that not including any of the water offsets that are required under water neutrality. That equals 3.3% of the current purveyor production. That's 10 years worth of modest growth. The Chicken Little mentality I hear from individuals, I just don't understand it. We do have concerns, and I'll expand on some of the basin metrics in the current AMR, but I'd like us to spend more time on solutions and increasing the safe yield than bickering about what we shouldn't or shouldn't do in terms of growth. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lindy Dowd, Los Osos resident for 52 years. When the peer-reviewed transient model for our basin came out about a year ago, it was sobering. At the June 18th, 2025 BMC meeting, Beth Reinecke from S&T Mutual read a thoughtful and poignant letter to this committee to address what she called the dire state of our basin, with a call to act quickly and decisively, echoing the charge in the Basin Plan for bold and decisive action. Ms. Reinecke identified 5 major actions that needed to be taken ASAP. And I'd like to know where we are with these. And I just listened to the recording of that meeting. And to refresh our memories, her 5 points are basically: 1, prioritize a reduction in pumping to stop and reverse seawater intrusion. essentially repurposing Title 19 from a growth support tool to a conservation tool. 2, connect all remaining non-sewered homes, about a quarter of the homes in this community, including Cabrillo Estates, to sewer collection systems. 3, implement a stormwater capture program. 4, add forever chemicals, PFAS, and chromium-6 to our basin management plan, along with strategies to eliminate them from our groundwater. And 5, to provide equity for all users, sharing the cost and conservation across the basin between the prohibition zone users who currently bear the brunt of the sewer and management fees and the private and ag well users who should be metered and monitored. Ms. Reinecke described the current pumping as beyond unsustainable a year ago, and yet the county has implemented this 0.4% growth rate for this year in spite of the BMC's request for a 0% growth rate. We as a community need to know where we stand with these 5 points. To my knowledge, none of them have been actually put on a meeting agenda. If they have been discussed at staff meetings, please share with the public what is being done. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Patrick McGibney with the Sustainability Group. We will be appealing yet another CDP permit issued by the county for another large residential development drawing water from our already stressed aquifer, which the Department of Water Resources says is in critical overdraft. And the new transient model indicates much the same. This appeal will be heard by the Coastal Commission on June 11th, and it's important that you know this. The Coastal Commission is using you as being complicit in allowing more growth in our community by your statement on how much water has been saved over the years and the fact that you've never pushed back on the flawed metrics the county uses to show sustainability. They speak with the county planning all the time. Have they ever spoken with you? In summary of this appeal, they say, quote, specifically, the BMC approved a sustainable yield for the Osos groundwater basin at 2,000 acre feet, and the community has used under 1,700 acre feet for the several years, all below the sustainable yield. The community doesn't use 1,700 acre feet. That is the total estimated, including all unmetered private and ag wells. Even using these estimates, they create a basin yield metric of 85% over the 20% buffer required. From information the county has provided them, they go on to say, quote, we have concluded that the current best available science demonstrates that the Los Osos groundwater basin is not in overdraft and that there is sufficient water to serve new water using development, end of quote. If you, the water purveyors, really think our basin is in crisis, then act and respond that way. Let the Coastal Commission know this. Create a moratorium on building by not issuing will-serve letters. The BMC has been talking about this for over a year, but Golden State has dragged their feet, saying that the CPUC requires them to issue these permits, but that isn't what the CPUC told me. Their intent isn't to overdraft the basin even more. It was to require purveyors to maintain their equipment and pipelines to assure customers received the water they required. On page 313 of the Basin Plan, it says, quote, implementation of certain actions under this Basin Plan, such as not issuing will-serve letters, will require extended approvals, such as from the Coastal Commission and the CPUC. The parties intend to initiate this approval process in 2015, end of quote. That was 11 years ago. It never happened. So we're still not clear if Golden State is required to overdraft our basin more by issuing will-serve letters. With these letters issued, the county issues CDPs and the BMC never objects, never appeals, never speaks out until now. Thank you. In closing, your request for a zero growth for 2026 is tied to the growth management ordinance, which the county isn't using for many of these developments, including this appeal. Your request was indicating that there wasn't sufficient water for any kind of water development growth, not just tied to the GMO. That needs to be made clear to the Coastal Commission and done before June 11th. Thank you.
Becky McFarland, newcomer to Los Osos. I've only been here 41 years, so some of you know a few more things than I do, and I honestly didn't start following the basin until it was 4 years ago or so. I honestly thought our sewer was going to clean things up, and I was so excited about that. I don't remember seawater intrusion ever being talked about during that whole gigantic drama that we went through and are still feeling the effects of. Maybe I wasn't listening. I try to listen. I was an environmental educator. I care about those things, but seawater intrusion was not the big thing. It was the nitrates. And here we find out the nitrates are still there. We've got Cabrillo Estates wants to do something, and these OWTSs, on-site water treatment systems, release 50% of their nitrates back into the ground. We heard 30% from James Bishop, and I thought that was shocking. So what are we doing here? And why is not the county helping us? I mean, from the beginning, when we're hearing that Cabrillo Estates was on a different watershed, and that's why they didn't have to be on the sewer, or you're on an acre, so your waste products don't end up in the aquifer eventually because it's a bigger spot. I mean, it's just been one sad decision after another. They're still allowing homes to be built outside of the prohibition zone. You can build in Cabrillo, right? You're not in the prohibition zone. We have a building over here on South Bay Boulevard that was a 156 square foot shed. It's now for sale. It's a giant 3-story building. That's a home with all this entertainment area and all this stuff. That was allowed to go in under the moratorium. We have the long stay. Is it a hotel? Is it condos? Is it what? Going in behind the Van Bearden, on the Van Bearden property. We've got the hotel down in Baywood going in. The county approved the Anastasi, is it 97 home neighborhood? We got to get real here. And back to the guest houses and the home offices. Those are real buildings with real people using them. So let's get it straight. And purveyors, I love that you did the letter. I never saw anything other than a draft. We need big time hard copy, and we need something that goes out to every citizen telling them what you said, because they're not going to the CSD website. If we don't post it on Nextdoor or on Problems and Solutions on Facebook, nobody hears it, or if it's not in the paper. So help us on that, and we'll help you.
All right, looks like there's no further public comment in the boardroom, and there's none online, so we will take it back to the board.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the comments that are made. We're hearing you loud and clear, and we understand that you are well vested in understanding the basin and what we're doing. We are the Basin Management Committee, and we have certain parameters that we operate under. Some of what I'm hearing blends over into the counties or other agencies. And I get it that there's the nexus of the water, but I don't want to dismiss any of the comments. I hear them. We are working diligently. It's on all of our minds to try to do the best and take the most swift and decisive action. So I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you coming out. I don't have any further rebuttal back to the comments at this point. We're here for the annual report. We have Spencer here. I'd kind of like to move into that unless there's other board member comments that they want to make real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we got other items, but I know I got Spencer here too. Any other comments?
I don't have a detailed comment. I mean, a lot of really, I think, interesting and important things were brought up that definitely warrant this board's attention. So I hope that these are things that we can discuss more in the future. That's basically it. There's just so many, like you said, Mark, there's a lot to get into, and we have the annual report, which is also probably going to be extensive. So
Yes, yes. Well said. Okay, we'll close public comment, item 7. We'll move on to item 8, the Los Osos Basin update report from Dan.
Thank you, Chair Zimmer. Happy to provide the Los Osos Basin update report. We have some newer faces in the room, so I'll just give my overview. So the Los Osos Basin update report is kind of an ongoing status update on various initiatives and items related to the Los Osos Basin. To help be efficient with the reader's time, we try to highlight the sections that have been updated for this report as underlines. And so those will be what I cover in my presentation. So on the water recycling funding grant, this is a critical grant. It paid for the water recycling funding study and the transient model, along with other funding sources, including county and BMC contributions, has been completed. We all know that, but the CSD has received full and final reimbursement for that grant. So that was a good milestone to clear, and we were happy to receive the full grant funding to offset costs to the BMC. With respect to basin monitoring program improvements, as the board knows, we've been working towards construction of a new lower aquifer monitoring well, a well we're calling the Sweet Springs monitoring well. It's actually located at near the intersection of 5th and Pismo. And one of the sort of critical path schedule items that we've been waiting on is receiving HCP credits. We were happy to be informed that on May 1st, the county did formally receive HCP credits, not just for this project, but for other potential projects within the basin. We've submitted our application for those credits and are currently waiting on that final approval for that project. Related to that, there are a number of other environmental and other requirements necessary for the permitting, both the coastal development permitting compliance as well as the encroachment permitting that we're working on as well, and making good progress and looking to get that project out to bid very soon. On basin metric evaluation, we'll probably talk about this a little bit with the annual report, but that is underway. We are making progress on updated basin metrics to address a number of critical issues that we've identified, and also really improvement opportunities for our basin metrics. And just to follow up on the growth rate, at our last meeting, the BMC approved a letter to be sent to Coastal Commission. We have sent that letter to Coastal Commission, as was referenced earlier. That is the letter that the BMC penned to the county with respect to the growth rate in 2026. No significant updates on the water recycling project. There is an updated section on the county update on the Cabrillo Estates project that references the May 5th, 2026 Board of Supervisors action, and as was referenced in public comment earlier. And the direction to Public Works staff was to advise CEPOA that the reimbursement agreement would be needed to move that project forward on initial cost for the project. Additional detail can be found on the Board of Supervisors website. And that concludes the Los Osos Basin update report.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any questions from the board before we go to comment?
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, Dan, or any of the purveyors, I'm interested in an update on the pumping redistribution, the optimization of the pumping that was referenced when we talked about the conditions of establishing the current safe yield. I see a table that looks new to me in on page 3 of the item, page 22 of the consolidated package. Is there any sense of timeline on making progress to actually change the distribution of pumping along the lines that the purveyors indicated was coming within the 5-year window? And again, if Mr. Zimmer, if you have comment on that, or Dan, whether there's a continuing conversation on that is important.
Yeah, I will comment. I apologize. I missed that in my presentation of the update report. That is new information, and that we have this month. And I can also comment that we are having continually conversations at a staff level about these changes and potential opportunities. But I would probably defer to the purveyor representatives for any details with respect to their water systems.
I could provide an update on what the CSD has just accomplished. Yesterday, we met down at the water yard with Cannon Engineering to kind of get not quite an understanding, but an introduction to the SCADA system that we have been wanting to implement for many years now. And I forget what that stands for, data accumulation. We've linked all of the wells and all of the pumps and all of the tanks into a central data point down at the office or from your laptop at home. So the operators have real-time information about what's going on. Also, you can dial up, create reports about particular wells, particular pumps, what happens when we run this one that long, this one that long, or what has happened in the past when we've done those sorts of things. So that's part of that optimization that's coming soon. Our operators are now getting familiar with the system. I mean, this has just got turned on in the past couple weeks. Well, we've been doing the shakedown for a couple months now. But as they learn to do the reports and pull the reports together and get that kind of thing, I expect to be reporting back here on that. But it's a big moment for us to have that kind of instantaneous data assemblage.
Yeah, congratulations on that, because I know we went through a similar project, and it is a big change. It's a tool that you have available, but it changes operation, it changes staff, needs to learn it, and so there's a transition. But it is a great tool for this optimization that can really help with that. As far as Golden State, we're looking at, so we already have the SCADA system on there, but we're looking at what physical changes do we have to put in place. And so we have some pretty big projects coming down the road. We have a treatment system for PFAS. We notified the detection of the PFAS at our Los Olivos. We've added that in there. We have manganese at our South Bay well. We have a treatment system. That one is coming online probably within the next month. So we've been constructing that over the last 6 months. And then just overall looking at our pumping, balancing it through operations like the SCADA and figuring out one of the significant the projects that we need to do is we do need to address Cabrillo well. And so we've looked at Cabrillo well and how it operates today, and reducing the amount of water that we extract from that site. It'll require us to drill a new well. And so we've been working on a design for that. We've ran some modeling with the Basin to see, is it worth, we did a complete evaluation of many sites, but that one with the infrastructure already in place, it made sense to go back there, and we could manage how we operate Cabrillo, and ultimately feel that was the best with all things considered. So have a lot going on there. I mean, we got projects, it's just going to take a while to implement them. That's one of the reasons why we put the 5-year plan in there.
Yep.
We know not only constructing those, permitting them is challenging.
Sure.
And financing them
Yeah.
in the same token.
Sure.
So
Sure.
there is a lot underway regarding that.
Both those reports are really encouraging. I'm hopeful that at some point, maybe by the fourth quarter, we could get a board item here, committee item, that would just lay out what we might expect in terms of a timeline once you've done the analyses and perfected the use of the SCADA system for optimizing pumping. Can we start seeing, yeah, we're going to do this first, and that's going to get us this much toward the goal that's laid out in that 5-year window. And just I think that's good information. That's management that the Basin Management Committee is tasked with, and I think the public would be interested in hearing about that as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I look forward to that. Thank you for the report.
Yeah. A couple comments, Dan. The WRFP grant, since the district's been made whole, is that going to come off this report now? Are we done with that? Just leave a tag. It takes up.
Yeah, I think that was a 3+ year initiative, so it's been on there a long time. There's a lot of updates, but yeah, there's probably an opportunity to clean up the update report now that the final reimbursement has been received.
Yeah. And then the HCP for our monitoring well, I know we just talked about it earlier in the week, but that application get approved by chance? I thought everything was looking like any moment we would get approval. Any approval on that application?
Still under review by county planning.
All right.
Approved pending completion of the biosurvey, which is a requirement of the encroachment permit. So, and has been authorized and scheduled, or will the biosurvey?
Okay, great.
And so obviously any help that my office can provide in interfacing with county staff, more than happy to do that.
I was going to go there, but it sounded like things were on the right track, so we didn't have to pull that card this time. And then let me see. Sorry. Kind of tying, our pumping, optimized pumping with our metric evaluation. I know we've had a few things going on with the annual report, but we also have that project that's, I think we've expended the budget in the first part of the year, January, February, March. We did the work. And I know you have that at a future meeting, but just want to highlight that's kind of really important for us to get the monitoring. If there's any tweaks to our metrics, and my main point on this is, will there be any changes when we do our fall data collection to change how we interpret that data?
Yeah, so you are correct. A lot of the work has been done and is complete on recommendations for updating the metrics. We did request that those efforts be sort of deprioritized relative to the annual report, so we could get the annual report done. We're going to take a major step towards that today, but then that would be the next thing that we would request Cleve Harris to wrap up for us, so that we can bring forth recommendations for the board's consideration and potentially adoption in time to evaluate the fall groundwater monitoring results against or relative to. So yeah, I think we're on track for that.
Okay, good. Last, any response from the Coastal Commission on our letter that we sent to them?
Yeah, they noted they received it.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Sorry to take so much time on the questions. Appreciate it. We got a lot coming forward here. This is going to be a big end of the year, that we have a lot of decision making and a lot of information and new information, which is exciting. In the same token, it's good. We're making progress.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm going to piggyback on the Basin metric evaluation that we're looking at. And one thing that may be helpful, I'm sure it's embedded in here in one way or another, but would it be possible in your monthly report to put like a timeline of, important dates that are coming up, just as like the very beginning item? That way we know, because, we've got the Basin metrics that we're trying to evaluate if we set a deadline for that or the annual report month and the review, just to keep us all kind of on a schedule. Because for me, I feel like these things sneak up on me really fast. But anyways, with that, would it be possible for me to ask you, Chair Zimmer, if we could have clarity on the question that Lynette Brooks asked related to our water level? Because she asked an interesting question about how that relates to the tidal shift. And I'm curious, I would love to hear that answer from Spencer, if that's something that we could work into this item.
Maybe when he does the presentation, he can address that, right? I mean,
Well,
I don't know if he's prepared.
Sure. I think it falls under the metric question, though, that's in this report, if it's possible. If not, we can always wait until he's up at the podium.
I just don't.
I just want to know if it is reflected in our current water level metric or not. He could probably give a pretty quick answer to that.
Can you give a pretty quick answer to that? Sounds complicated to me, but go ahead, give it a swing.
Good afternoon, Spencer Harris, Cleveland Harris geologist. With respect to the tidal influences, what we've seen from work, not just in Los Osos, but in other areas of the county, is that the tidal influence extends farther in the lower aquifers, which are under pressure. And that's because there's more movement in a pressure condition than in an unconfined condition where water's moving in the aquifer and filling pore space as the tide rises and then draining out as the tide goes out. So, it's a good point relative to, our monitoring, but it is possibly more of an influence on the lower aquifer water levels, and maybe that's counterintuitive. But it's related to confining pressures and the weight of the ocean and the bay, the weight of that water pushing down, that actually displaces some, creates some pressure increases that propagate better in the lower aquifer, whereas the upper aquifer, the water moves within the pore spaces, and so it's slower and doesn't extend as far into the basin. With respect to our metrics update, yes, we're looking at the effects of tidal influence, and we would be using the transducer data to work that in to what we come out with. So we are definitely considering that and addressing that.
Yeah.
So
That's perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
That's all I was wondering. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions from the board. We'll go to public comment.
If you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand. We will take public comments in the boardroom first.
Hello, my name is Jeff Edwards, and I wanted to speak to the water recycling funding study that now appears to be being closed out. I hope we just don't put that on a shelf. Fundamentally, this study was supposed to tell us how to better deploy our treated wastewater from the recycling facility, which brings me to the question I've raised double-digit times probably. Broderson does not appear to be working, and yet there's almost no concern about that. 80% of our treated wastewater is discharged at Broderson on a daily basis, and yet we don't know where the water is going. I've heard Broderson's working, but it doesn't appear to be working. The mound that was supposed to develop to create a head to push water through, the treated wastewater through the clay lens into the lower aquifer, zones D and E, the head is not developing any further, as I understand it. Maybe Spencer can clarify. But the water recycling funding study, it talks about ag exchanges and putting treated wastewater into the creek. We've looked at those options. So I've suggested before, this whole study is kind of been a waste of time and effort, but I'm reassured that it produced the transient model that we have now, the wonderful transient model. But we don't know if the transient model is any good either. We don't know if it's better than the steady state model that we had. The inputs for the transient model, I think, are flawed. It uses an additional 300 acre feet of water demand in the urban area. That's way over what we would project to use over the next 20, 25 years even. So, I'm concerned. The executive director report it focuses on paper. We talk about metrics and changing the metrics. Let's spend more time on projects. Let's figure Broderson out. Let's plan for the next new well that we're going to put in. We're just pushing paper here. I don't think we're moving the needle. Thanks.
Patrick McGivney, and this is a response to Dan's report and basically what I heard up on the board here, your comments, specifically something that Supervisor Gibson has said. I'd like to just clarify. In the stipulated judgment, it outlines the members of the Basin Management Committee, the 3 water purveyors, and the county. The county is listed in there because they have jurisdiction over the wastewater that goes into Broderson, also on the unmetered wells. What the stipulated judgment doesn't say is that the county is on the board to talk about land use ordinances, land use authority, or building and planning. And that's all I really hear from that seat. I don't hear anything about the wastewater, what they're going to be doing with it, or how they can improve it, or what more we can do with the wastewater treatment plant. I don't hear anything like that. It's always about more building or what we can do, whether it's the, Title 19 or the GMO or whatever like that. It has to do with building, not with our groundwater basin, which is what you are supposed to be managing, all 4 of you. Thank you.
Richard Margetson. With respect to the letter got sent to the Coastal Commission. You asked for a response or what happened with it. And you got a response of they received it. So what's the next step? Are you going to call and say, hey, we sent you a letter. You have no problem talking to the county anytime they pick up the phone. We'd like to have a discussion. Either you come here, we'll go there, whatever. Just sending the letter and getting a receive and file? I'm sorry, that's not enough. It's not enough. Cabrillo. The history of Cabrillo and why it wasn't part of the sewer. Initially, it wasn't part of the sewer because the cost per linear foot to run lines through there was going to be cost prohibitive. That was the first thing that came, when that issue came up, when Bruce Buell was general manager and they were talking about this project. That was the first reason, because the price per linear foot to do Cabrillo and hook that up was going to increase the cost for the rest of the community overall per household. Board of Supervisors couldn't come up with $500,000 to help them in the initial phase of looking into what they want to do. After the community said that community said, yeah, we'd like to possibly hook up. County had no problem getting Monarch Grove hooked up. Supervisor sitting right here. This community pays a tremendous amount of taxes, a tremendous amount into the general fund. And they couldn't find $500,000 for Cabrillo to possibly get this started? The retrofit to build certificate chart in here. 0 in January, 0 in February, 0 in March, 0 in April. It's my understanding, because I've heard it from the horse's mouth, that, like, here's Moore Shores as an example. They haven't retrofitted their requirement yet. But they were told, as long as you have them, by the time you need occupancy of those 10 units, you'll be fine. What if that doesn't happen? Oh, you got close, or you got halfway there, or you got 2/3 of the way there. Go ahead. Is that how we're doing things in this community now? And as far as Bruce, can I just finish the last sentence? As far as Bruce's comment about concern about the pumping regime, both Golden State and the CFD talking about those projects, they're expensive. And they're going to take time. And I don't see the county putting in any money to help on any of this, any of it, to help Los Osos and the Basin.
Bring this down to my level. Deborah Howe, resident of Cabrillo. I want to thank you for your letter of support for the Cabrillo Estates sewer connection. As you well know, 4 out of the 5 supervisors said no way. They couldn't find their way to come up with the money to help us get this started, even though they know that the community of Cabrillo is willing to pay for the entire project. Very disappointing. I don't feel like they really took into consideration the cost for the residents up there to be under the lamp, the financial impact, and also the benefit of eliminating contamination from our well, our sewer, our septic systems. And let's, as been mentioned already, the benefit to recycled water. So we'll keep thinking about this project and trying to figure out how to move it forward. And again, thank you for your support.
All right, it looks like there are no further public comments in the boardroom and there are none online, so we will take this back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate the executive director's report, Dan. We will move on to the main event. Yes. Action item 9, presentation of the draft 2025 annual monitoring report.
Thank you, Chair Zimmer. So I will be presenting on the 2025 draft annual monitor report. I'm available for questions, and then Spencer Harris with Cleat Harris Geologist will also be available for questions as well. So let's jump into it. So we'll be focusing on this screen here due to our technical difficulties. But just some order of business items. So the public comment period is currently open. It was opened on May 20th, and it's going to stay open through May 31st. You can submit public comments to me at danheimel@confluences.com. And our recommendation for the board today is to receive a presentation from BMC staff on the public draft annual monitoring report and confirm the schedule for the BMC to consider approval and submission to the court. So pretty standard process we go through every year.
And then as far as some of the comments or changes, we've kind of made agreements that as long as they're not significant or something of that nature, we can go ahead and file it. Is that?
Sorry. Yeah, the standard procedure is we will receive comments here. We'll have 2 more days of receiving comments. And then Cleve Harris geologists will prepare a final draft that we'll bring back to the
Okay.
BMC in June.
All right, just want, thanks for that clarity.
At our, expected at our normal June meeting.
Expected at our normal third Wednesday at 1:30 June meeting, unless we have a conflict.
Okay, which we won't this month. And Mr. Hamm, it might be just useful to frame the nature of this as a retrospective of conditions in the basin during calendar year 2025, as opposed to a management plan going forward. Is that a fair observation? It talks about accomplishments. It talks about the measurements that have been made.
Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization. It is a report on conditions and physical observations for what we saw occurring in the basin for calendar year 2025. The report does include updates on initiatives and other items that are underway and that we want to highlight and document. But yeah, there is no necessarily any policy, direction or anything included in this report. It is, it's a annual monitoring report on, status of the basin.
In the future, if we could, a longer public comment period would that's pretty short for all that information. I mean, typically, this is not an environmental document or anything like that, but I mean, a 30-day review, fairly standard. So if we could arrange that in the future, keep in mind to that, please.
Yeah, that's good input. Yeah, we can strive to extend the public comment period longer. I think we talked about that internally a little bit too. There still will be an opportunity to review and comment on the final draft for the board in June, but yeah, that it is more difficult for the board if we receive comments during that period, because to Mark's point, we are kind of looking to finalize and submit, and so it's harder to make changes that the board can. Yeah, so it is appreciated if you are going to review and comment, that you do it on the public draft, and we will strive to make more time available in future years. So my presentation on this is relatively standard. We've done it. I've probably done it the last 6 years. Really, I focus on sort of key figures and tables from the report, and just look to summarize, some of the key information that the report provides. The report is obviously much longer and contains much more information and narrative about the basin. And I really encourage you to read it. There's a lot of great information to improve your understanding of Los Osos groundwater basin conditions and BMC initiatives as well. And also it really helps people, help it helps people understand when we talk about things like basin yield metrics and sustainable yields and other specific terminology that comes up a lot in our BMC meetings and discussions. So as always, we start with rainfall, as rainfall is our primary source of recharge to the basin. And in the 2025 rainfall year, so that's July 1 to June 30th, there were 12.03 inches of rainfall, which is below average. In the calendar year, alternately, though, there was 19.52 inches, which is above average, and that just speaks to how the timing in which rain falls in different winter or wetter periods. And so we have a graph here on the bottom that shows the rainfall year precipitation relative to the average. Again, it's below average. And then the graph above is the cumulative departure from the mean rainfall. And this is a graph that helps us track longer term trends. And so when we have drought years and years of below average rainfall, we'll see the cumulative departure drop. And then when we have wet years or wet periods of more consecutive wet, we'll see the graph climb. Good examples of that are, the significant increases in the late 90s associated with that El Nino period. And then what we've seen more recently is some declines in average rainfall associated with the drought from 2012 to 2016, and then the drought from 2020 to 2022. And then we've seen sort of an oscillating period the last couple of years of some above average, some below average years. Or I guess 2 above average and 1 below average years. So that's rainfall. Why is rainfall important? Again, as I mentioned, it's our source of recharge. A lot of the rain falls and percolates directly into the ground, and that is our primary source of recharge. The other significant source of recharge is flow in Los Osos Creek. And so we have here some stream gauge hydrographs for several years. And I like to show these because it can kind of highlight the impact of when and like the magnitude and sort of the frequency of the interval of rainfall can cause some pretty significant changes to Los Osos Creek flow patterns. And Los Osos Creek is another critical recharge facility for the basin. So, and it does take a good amount of rainfall to get the creek to start flowing. And in some years, it flows for a long contiguous period of time, and in other years we get more intermittent flow, as we saw in sort of March and April of 2025. And then, I always think, to Bruce's point, this is a report that's pointing to good conditions in calendar year 2025, but by the time we present it in May, we've already completed another wet season. So, I think it's helpful to highlight that, we had pretty good flow in the creek this calendar year, at least for the first part of the wet part of calendar year 2026. All right, so then we go to production, obviously. So recharge fills up the basin. Production, that's where we extract water for the basin, critical for health and safety and purveyor and non-purveyor needs here in the Los Osos Basin. We start with the purveyor production. When I say purveyors, I mean Golden State Water Company, Los Osos Community Services District, and S&T Mutual Water Company, the 3 water purveyors we have here in Los Osos. Purveyor production tends to float around 1,000 acre feet per year. It goes up and down each year a little bit. This year it's a little bit up from where it was last year and then even the year before, but roughly around 1,000. And roughly half LOCSD, half Golden State, and then the S&T, a real small percentage of that. Then the table 14 here on the right shows total basin groundwater production. So we have our purveyor production here, but then we also, from the basin, we have domestic, or what I also sometimes call rural residential. These are your residences that aren't connected to purveyor water systems, that have their own individual wells that they rely on for their water supply. And so this is an estimated value. We got an updated estimate of rural residential or domestic production in 2023. And that's what we use going forward until we get better information. Then we have community facilities. These represent a number of different facilities within the community. I think it incorporates the community park, Sea Pines, and the Los Osos Cemetery. And what I highlighted here is that we have seen a reduction in communities facilities pumping and groundwater use recently, and highlighted in purple, and that's largely because we've started connecting those facilities to recycled water, which provides a significant benefit to the basin by removing their use of lower aquifer water, which is probably our most critical resource, and providing their needs through recycled water. And then agriculture, we have estimates of agriculture. There's a very detailed description of the methodologies that we utilize to estimate how much groundwater agricultural pumps. Our estimates for 2025 were 470 acre feet per year, which is a decrease from the last 2 years of roughly around 500 acre feet per year. And that has to do with precipitation patterns and other meteorological conditions, as well as agricultural operations throughout that year. So total production in 2025 was 1,680 acre feet per year. That's roughly where we've been the last 3 years, and around 1,600 and something acre feet. And that's a reduction from our estimates from back in 2022 and earlier. And that's associated with, again, some of these recycled water deliveries, as well as the change in the assumption around domestic production, and also reductions in estimates of ag production. So that's the production piece of the annual report. And then we talk about recycled water. So this is a table we include in the annual report, and this looks to compare the planned amount of recycled water in the Basin plan versus actual recycled water usage in 2025. And the first thing you'll notice is that just the total of actual recycled water use is a lot lower than what was planned in the Basin plan. That's can be attributed to a couple of things. One of the biggest things is we have had much more conservation of indoor water use in Los Osos than was envisioned when the Basin plan was developed, and so that really is a testament to the community and their conservation of water. But there are other factors as well. There was envisioned potentially more ag reuse or recycled water use at other facilities like the Memorial Park that haven't been materialized yet for a variety of reasons, cost being one, but also effectiveness. Offsetting groundwater production in those portions of the basin does not provide as much benefit as offsetting groundwater use in more of the urban centralized portion of the basin. And then we look at our basin metrics. Just again highlighting a key milestone in 2025 with respect to urban reuse and recycled water is that the county specifically, was able to connect the community park and the Monarch and Los Osos middle schools to recycled water, and offset and reduce their use of potable water. And so that's something that's worth celebrating, and it took quite a bit of money and quite a bit of time, but is going to help us as we move forward by reducing our use of groundwater. Basin metric preview. So these are the basin metrics are kind of key performance indicators that we use to kind of track overall health and trends in the basin. They look to aggregate a lot of individual data points into one metric that can kind of help us just or understand where basin conditions may be trending. The basin yield metric is it's the ratio of how much production we have divided by the sustainable yield, and we want to have production that is under the sustainable yield. And then, as was mentioned earlier, we actually want to have a target of production that's 20% under the sustainable yield, or a basin yield metric of 80. And so the calculated value for 2025 was 71. So that's no change from the previous year. That's steady. That's also a favorable value because it's under 80. But there is a footnote number 2 in there that does indicate that in 2025, we changed our sustainable yield from 2,380 to 2,000. And so if you were to recalculate the basin yield metric, as was mentioned earlier in public comment, that value would be 84, which is higher than 80, but still is production under the sustainable yield. The water level metric is a metric that tries to aggregate water levels in key wells together, and we can track where water levels are trending. We have a target of 8 feet above sea level. We're currently sitting around 3.5 as of 2025. But I will highlight that the 2025 water level metric is a bit different than previous water level metrics because we modified one of the wells that's included in the metric to be a better monitoring well, but unfortunately it skews the data so it doesn't line up exactly as the data we had before. But for the purposes of establishing a water level metric value for this report, the water level for that well was assumed to be the level that it was in 2024 for calculating the current value of 3.5 feet, which is a decrease from 4.1 feet, but again, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison of actual conditions. And something we're looking to address with the basin metric updates that we talked about earlier. The chloride metric is similarly, it's an aggregation of chloride, which is the key indicator of potential seawater intrusion, concentrations in a series of key wells. We have a target of 100. The current value for the metric in 2025 was 230 milligrams per liter. This was a decrease from 2024, where the value was 249. So that represents an improvement in those conditions. And we'll show a graph of that on the next slide. And then the final metric is the nitrate metric. This is a metric where we track really the benefit of the Los Osos water recycling project and the construction of a collection system to collect wastewater and convey it to a treatment facility that removes nitrates. And then we convey it back to Broderson and Bay Ridge leach fields for disposal and then also for recycled water use. And that is, we are seeing an improvement in that metric in 2025, as we saw a decrease from 15.7 milligrams per liter to 12.9 milligrams per liter. Oh, all right. We'll find out which computer that's on. Thank you, Director Reinecke. Okay, so here's a graphical representation of the water level and chloride metrics. Just again, starting with the water level metric, we're not actually showing the values for 2025 again because they're not representative for comparing against a historical data set with the modification of the well. But we do show the chloride metric. So this value 230 is a reduction from last year's value of 249. There are two values per year shown here. This is the spring, this is the fall, but we're really comparing these two values in our comparison. We have these targets, out in time, and then there's even a timeline associated with when it's estimated to reach those targets. The water level metric was trending up, but slightly behind the target. The chloride metric was still sort of trending along the target. But we're also, with the updated metrics, we're also looking to get updated targets because we now have a transient model, which is potentially is a better tool for developing potential targets for those metrics into the future. And okay, a couple other just key parameters from the annual report. One is change in storage. So this is where we track just sort of changes in the amount of fresh water and storage in the basin year over year. We did see a reduction in change of storage from spring of 2024 to spring of 2025. That's potentially associated with the lower than average rainfall for calendar year 2025. The amount of change of storage, 1,000 acre feet, is significant, but compared to the total amount of water and storage of 127,000, it's less than 1%, and this tends to go up and down year over year. It's based on all the different inputs and outputs, but it seems to be mainly tied to rainfall. Well, don't quote me on that. And then groundwater and storage above sea level. This is another similar analysis, well, here we do we correlate it with rainfall. So maybe I'm not totally wrong on that. But yeah, we did see a reduction in 2025 relative to 2024. However, if you look at, relative to 2018, 2019, 2020, we are over the longer term up with the amount of groundwater and storage above sea level, which does correlate with the increase in the water level metric. All right, here's our nitrate metric. Again, we saw a reduction in the nitrate metric. The nitrate metric is really, it's a 5-year average. So as we continue to see year over year, concentrations decrease, the 5-year average trends along with that, but does lag a little bit. It is a 5-year average, and that is actually exceeding the trend line that was included in the Basin plan. And then here's this is our seawater intrusion contouring. So this is where we look to sort of track the extent of seawater intrusion, the movement of the front of seawater intrusion within the basin over, in this case, it's the last 7 years. And so, one thing to look at is, where are we, and where we are is this white contour here. So we're, and we want to see that line retreat towards the ocean, not move towards inland. So in 2025, we retreated slightly from the turquoise line here in 2024, based on estimates of, based on water quality data from the monitoring wells that we have. I think a lot of it's largely based on LA10. There's some animations there, but and then we also can confirm that with monitoring locations at LA41, LA43, and LA15 that are not showing chloride concentrations above 250 milligrams per liter. So that's good news to see a retreat there. Go through that, and then we have our upper aquifer water level profile. This is a metric that we use to sort of assess for the potential of seawater intrusion occurring in the upper aquifer. I should have mentioned earlier, but the chloride metric really focuses on the lower aquifer and intrusion in zones D and E, which are described in the annual report. And the upper aquifer water level profile, I think, is relatively consistent with what we've seen in previous years, with the blue line trending, above the protective elevation, or sort of the threshold line that we want to see. But we do see, as we have in previous years, that at upper aquifer well 5, it has dipped below, and that's something that we have been watching closely and will continue to watch for the potential presence of seawater intrusion into the upper aquifer at that location. And then this is a table that we include both in the Basin Update report, but we do memorialize it in the annual report every year, and it's our status of completion of Basin programs. So Program A is, as you can see, has been fully complete. It's been fully complete for some time. Program B has a number of projects that have not been initiated. There has been some talk of exploring the community nitrate removal facility component of Program B. That was one of the recommendations that came out of the water recycling funding program, is looking to enhance production from the upper aquifer, as that has it reduces the threat or impact of seawater intrusion. But the upper aquifer does have nitrate contamination, so it requires treatment or blending or other ways of mitigating that contamination. And so we've scoped a project to sort of look at opportunities to do that we're trying to fund at the moment. Moving into Program C, this is a program to shift production from the west to the central and east portions of the basin, as that can help reduce the threat of seawater intrusion. I just wanted to highlight that in 2026, January 2026, almost 2025, the CSD's second program, or the CSD's Bay Oaks well, which is the BMC's second program C well, did come online. And that also marked a significant milestone for basin infrastructure and our efforts to manage the basin through pumping modifications. And then, yeah, it's not on here, but we mentioned it earlier, the recycled water connections for the schools and the community park were critical milestones that occurred in 2025 as well. So there are a number of recommendations that are included in the annual report, as well as just a description of the status is shown in green. Yeah, so the first one was updating the maximum sustainable yield. Now that the locations of the second program seawell has been finalized and the transient model has been completed, this has been partially completed. There, where the second program seawell is included in several of the transient model scenarios and sustainable yield scenarios. The reevaluating of the metrics, we've talked about that quite a bit. That's in progress, and we're looking to complete that in 2026. A peer review of the basin model. I feel we didn't even, not only peer reviewed, we built a whole new model, and then it had it peer reviewed by multiple independent hydrogeologists. So I feel we can do 2 check marks on that one. So that was good, and that's something that had been called out in the stipulated judgment. I talked about the water level protective elevation at Upper Aquifer 5, where that's continued to watch. Installation of the Sweet Springs monitoring well, that's an ongoing initiative for the BMC this year, and so we anticipate that getting completed before the end of the year. And then discussion of Chrome 6 and PFAS concentrations in purveyor wells was a recommendation from recommended for this year's annual report and is included in the report. And so, yeah, so here's that schedule that we kind of talked about. Released on May 20th. We're here today reviewing it. Public comments are due May 31st. We'll be back here on June 17th for the board to review and consider approval of the final draft, and then we'll be looking to submit to the court by June 29th to meet the requirements of the adjudication. So that concludes my presentation on the 2025 annual monitoring report.
Thank you, Dan. When we come back in June, and if there are changes made, can you memorialize those or highlight those in some fashion, just so we know? I've gone through the report. I don't want to have to go through it again and try to see, did something change or not, you know?
Yeah, so we can use track changes, or actually AI provides a lot of great tools for being able to just focus on things that have changed from previous versions. So yeah,
Okay. Any comments before we go to public comment? Thank you, Dan. Fingers on the button.
I do have just a couple things that I would like to just know before we start getting into all the comments. One is related to the change in the agriculture pumping. I know we had switched over to the satellite imagery as a method, and I'm just curious if that's where that change had come from primarily. And also, I think that's my main question. I think I'll keep that as my only question ahead of the end of the comments.
and I think I can answer that one. And I may have misspoke on a staff meeting earlier. I think the number that's shown in the report is actually consistent with the previous methodology. Is that right, Spencer? There is an appendix that includes a comparison to the satellite evapotranspiration hybrid methodology, which is does actually even have a lower ag estimate, but the number that's included in the production tables, the 470 acre feet per year, is from the previous methodology. And so, but in terms of why it's lower than previous years, maybe Spencer could speak to that. But I was misunderstood earlier what number was. Yeah, in the previous conversation.
Okay, yeah, I think you're talking about the same conversation that I am. So, yeah, if we could get clarification, it doesn't have to be right now, at least at some point, that would be appreciated.
All right, thank you. We'll move to public comment.
If you would like to make a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you are online, please raise your hand. We will take any public comments in the boardroom first.
Hi, Lynette Brooks. Some suggestions for the annual report. Beef up the executive summary and be honest. A lot of people are never going to read beyond the executive summary. On the seawater intrusion front, don't make this sound as innocuous as it does currently. Copy some of the discussion from later in the report up to here. Seawater intrusion into Zone E is a significant threat to the basin sustainability and has been for decades. Chloride concentrations at LA15 have increased by 47% over the past 5 years. In Zone E, seawater intrusion is interpreted to be laterally pervasive in the western area. This overall trend indicates a worsening condition over time. Those are all quotes in the report. Move them up to the summary. The basin yield metric. Cleith Harris and this board have known for years that the model calculated sustainable yield from the steady state model was wrong. It did not match data. Even though the report technically has to use the sustainable yield decided for 2025, and there is a little footnote, it needs to be put, stronger caveats need to be put on that number. Use phrases such as, the transient model shows pumping at the 1830 acre feet per year is not sustainable. If you discuss the new 2000 acre feet sustainable yield, stress that pumping would have to be optimized, and it is not currently optimized. The chloride metric. Make it clear that the metric is heavily influenced by one well that has erratic chloride concentrations. Specify that the chloride metric is calculated in the spring and fall, but in 2025, water levels at several wells were lowest in July. The water level metric. Make it clear again that July had much lower water levels. You see that if you look at the transducers, but not really otherwise. It is written in the report that a few wells have that, but it's actually more than a few wells. Change the method to not include well LA16. Keeping the well with the highest water level at an assumed level violates scientific standards. If the average was recalculated without that, then the metric would be 0.9 feet lower than in 2024, not 0.6 feet. And I really hate to do this. You guys all know me but I have to agree with Jeff Edwards. Broderson, Leachfield is never explained well. There's this, further assumption is that it's 50% development. I think that only 224 acre feet were actually applied in the steady state model. I don't know how much is applied in the transient model. But where is the rest of the water going? What was expected to happen? What happened? Why are they different? And please allow me one more sentence. Add an explanation that the original USGS model that indicated recharge at the Broderson site could minimize saltwater intrusion simulated 2,380 acre feet of recharge at that site. Almost 10 times the amount, I think, that was simulated in the steady state model. Thank you.
Regarding the basin yield metric, it too is just an estimate as described in the basin plan on page 108, where it states that the basin yield metric can be altered by either increasing the sustainable yield or decreasing the extraction rate. In other words, it can be manipulated to match whatever outcome is desired. This is why the Department of Water Resources states neither it nor the sustainable yield should ever be used to indicate sustainability. Yet this is what the county and the Coastal Commission are basing their decisions on and claiming our basin is sustainable. The fact that this committee has never pushed back on that assertion is alarming. These agencies need to know definitively from you that the BMC, that you uphold the findings of the transient model and that our basin is not in a sustainable state for new development. In the director's report, the sustainable yield being used is from an old model, which placed it at 2380 acre-feet with a basin yield metric of 71%, using an extraction rate of around 1,700 acre-feet. The problem is, this committee is using last year's data to manage this year's basin. The new transient model baseline scenario used the extraction rate of 1830 acre-feet yearly, which was based on an extraction from 2019 to 2023 and is predicted to remain the same for the next 45 years. With the new adopted sustainable yield set at 2,000 acre-feet, an extraction rate of 1830, and a basin yield metric is going to be 91%, not 71%. There won't be, and actually there isn't now, that required 20% buffer for uncertainties that indicates that there isn't any extra water for new development. The stipulated judgment and the basin plan have one primary goal, and that is to stop seawater intrusion. Chloride levels have been climbing since before you took over the management and have continued ever since. They are indicators of seawater intrusion, which indicates a basin in overdraft. Our community has drastically reduced water use over the last decade and more, but we still have an overdraft in our basin. The basin plan says accurate data, not estimates, are required for successful management of the basin. Yet 40+% of our basin, private and ag well use, is being estimated. Is it any wonder our basin is failing that we're looking for other sources of water? The basin plan has a suggested remedy for this, and that is that the county pass an ordinance requiring metering of all of our wells. Maybe when we get a new supervisor, this might happen. Thank you.
Before I get on here, could we bring up the Zone E seawater intrusion graph that didn't get shown?
Yeah, I don't think we have ready access to that, unfortunately.
We'll take all, I plan, Mr. Chairman, I would think we can take all these comments and any that are written, we'll direct staff to respond to them over. So if you'd like to make reference to that in your comments, we'll know what we're talking about.
Okay, Becky McFarland, and Patrick made reference, and Lynette, they made reference to this. And I really think all of those seawater intrusion lines should be shown at these meetings, because that red line used to be on with all of them. And that red line is closer to, what's our new well over here? Is that not a Zone E well? Zone E seawater intrusion goes way farther in than anything on the Zone D graph or map or whatever you want to call it. I think that's really important to put in there. People here, look it up online. I think I did post it on Nextdoor somewhere. I can't remember, but that should be in there. And as far as our basin not being an overdraft, if you have seawater intrusion, you have overdrafted your basin. And the DWR has said not to use it. Is it the basin yield metric or the whatever metric is not to be used to prove sustainability. That is it's all over the internet. You can find it. So it's beyond me why that was used by the county, is continually used by the county. And that's what they told the California Coastal Commission. That's misrepresentation of our basin, and it's dishonest. And I find that appalling. After air, what's our most important thing we need is water. This is our water supply. As to moving wells inland, we hear it should help the seawater intrusion. I haven't heard, or maybe I missed it, how much? How much does that actually help to move a well? How much, does it make the head stronger to push the water out. I haven't really heard that. I keep hearing that it's supposed to work, but we also, and I think Beth may have said this before, when we move wells closer inland, we move them closer to that flow of toxic waste coming out of the unlined Los Osos dump. And so that needs to be known by people. And I think we need more info on what's going on there, because that's scary. I don't drink the water out of my tap here. It doesn't taste bad, but I buy bottled water or we filter it. I'm not worried about seawater in my actual drinking water or the nitrates in there. I know those are filtered out. But seawater intrusion is a problem beyond having salty tasting water. Also on the ag numbers, I wonder on the numbers going into Broderson, because it's only based on indoor water use. Also, I'm sorry, I'm going to go over like 2 seconds. I live at the Broderson gate right there, and the county used to go in every single day. So now they have a computer monitoring of that. And so is that going to tell us more about what's happening? Where's the water going? I think it goes to my giant avocado tree, which I appreciate, but it would be nice to know. Thank you.
There are no further public comments in the boardroom, so we will move to online. Jeff Edwards, all you have to do is unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, and in referring to the Basin Plan Metric Summary, that table, I think it's become somewhat clunky. We know that the basin yield metric, we've got this divergence or difference between 71 and 84. With regard to the water level metric, there's no context in terms of where this water level was. And I mentioned earlier in 1990, we kind of hit peak demand for water, wasting water, and we were at a -3.5 on the -3.5 below sea level, -3.5 feet. And so we've come up 7 feet as of now, which I think is a substantial improvement, yet it indicates deterioration. Likewise, with the nitrate metric, and for the folks interested, 87% of the development in Los Osos has already been connected to the sewer. So there's just a small fraction of 13% that's not. But with regard to that nitrate metric, there's, again, no context. We started at 22 plus milligrams per liter, and now we're down to 12.9, which is a substantial improvement. And again, after spending $200 million, I would think that we did substantially decrease legacy nitrates. You heard about the Broderson discharges, 422 acre feet of the 521 acre feet of total wastewater generated. That's 80.9%. We absolutely need to get our arms around that. And unfortunately, I did not see exploring Broderson in the set of recommendations that staff has presented to you for 2025. In fact, all of the recommendations are paper pushing. There's no infrastructure projects in any of the recommendations. And if you want to talk infrastructure, we now have the second program C well installed by the CSD. Unfortunately, there is a zero increase or zero addition to the safe field. Unfortunately, $3 million plus has been spent with no benefit, seemingly. Program B has been discussed, but there's quantity and quality limitations with that. So I don't think that's a panacea. We need to talk more about state water. That's not been discussed at all today. And I think we also, there's this discussion about the creek and its importance in recharge. Well, I've advanced the idea of an inflatable dam on the north side, or sorry, the south side of the bridge at Los Osos Creek and Los Osos Valley Road. That's let's use nature to recharge the lower aquifer instead of putting treated or untreated stormwater into the creek. That's a non-starter. And then lastly, we have a geographic information system database for all the wells in town. Yet I have heard nothing about that, understanding the distribution of those wells and how that database may be used for a well abandonment program, which I think would be in helpful, not only relative to quality, but quantity, certainly. Thank you for your time.
All right, we have one more public comment online. Emily Megan, so all you have to do is unmute.
Okay, Emily Miggins, and just going back in the presentation there, um, I think I have this right, but the actual performance of 521 acre feet per year leaves a 259 acre foot gap in our basin plan management goals. Just simply, I'm curious that planned volume is a liability, not an asset. If this isn't materializing for our community and basin, we cannot maintain basin health with and combat seawater intrusion on paper alone, as Jeff was saying. Hi, Jeff. I urge the CSD I guess CSD and BMC to explain exactly why these critical urban and agricultural hookups are stalled, and what is our specific timeline for reaching that 780 acre foot per year target? I've talked many years in the past about sustainability metrics and reporting standards. And how are we working proactively? It'd be really nice to hear about that, because there are metrics on helping pre-competitively commercial and small specialty crop farmers and fruit growers achieve water use, real-time water use goals. So I'm just kind of curious, maybe on a softer note on these things. Thank you.
There's no further public comment in the boardroom or online, so we can take it back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the comments, bringing those to us. Just a broad comment from me is that we're talking about projects. We're talking about the monitoring. I just want to bring back in front of us that we have 2 monitoring wells that have been significantly delayed. And so that's unfortunate. It's kind of set us back, because in my mind, we have to get our monitoring data accurate, trustable, to the best that we can. It's a tool to use to make decisions, but that was a key milestone, is getting those 2 monitoring wells in place to help us make better decisions. We do have the list of projects up there that we've talked about. We know that some of those projects need to be shifted or changed based on our new modeling results, and we're working on that. And so along with our monitoring well that we expect to get a permit for, I think construction of those are fairly quick. We should have that soon. We're looking at our metrics to evaluate the data, and then, looking at the projects ahead of us. I think that's, we agree on all of that and want to make that happen as quickly as possible. I'll just kind of end it there. I don't know if there's any more comments along that line, but I think it would be appropriate to have Spencer maybe come up and
prepare responses if necessary. So I don't think we need to respond.
go to those.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I think it appropriate if other committee members have questions or direction they'd like to give to staff. But I mean, the point of this presentation was to present this in draft form, to receive comments. I think that our staff and our consultant have heard those comments. They can take those back, see which require some response, if any require modifications to the annual report, they can advise us that in the staff report for the item that comes back in June, and we can act. Again, what you're speaking of is absolutely the appropriate question of what this committee needs to do to move forward. But again, this annual report is essentially a historical document documenting conditions as of last year. And once we have approved it, I think it's absolutely then appropriate to decide on a work plan for the future based on what we see here. But I don't know that there's utility in going through every single issue that's been raised. I think that's really a technical issue that should be considered by the appropriate technical staff.
Okay. Appreciate that comment. And I think that you're right. That was why I made the comment, was just there was a lot of mixing of projects and future business that we need to take care of. I guess as far as there were some specific comments related to the annual report, and I guess I'd like to know, like, the process for responding to those. Are Dan and your staff going to go back and look at those comments and then respond to them on the draft that we,
as necessary?
Can you elaborate on how we're going to respond to the comments that we just heard that were specific to the annual report?
Yeah, I mean, we can look for board direction, but I mean, that we can review them and review the recording and see if, there are comments that we want to respond to. We can do a comment response log. That's probably the most thorough way to do it. And so, and then we have done that in the past, so we could do that. And then that can be presented as part of the final draft to the BMC, so that, there's transparency around the comments received and the responses to those comments and or any potential edits that may have been made in response to those comments.
Okay, that's helpful. Beth?
There are just a couple things I would like to bring up, especially since Spencer's here. One, I didn't actually get an answer to my question related to the agricultural pumping, as to how that change, I guess, was determined. It was reduced by 50 acre feet a year, and I'm curious how that occurred or what the impetus for that was. So that's one question I have. But that's a question. I do want to make just the observation that sustainable yield, as we've changed it in the last year, which, we changed it to reflect future projects, and it doesn't sound like either of those or any of those at this point are on the immediate horizon. So we're still pumping at the same rate. In fact, we're pumping more. The purveyors are pumping more. Apparently, there's other users that are pumping less. So our actual production number was a little bit lower than maybe it would have been last year. So I think these are important. So that puts our sustainable yield, our basin yield metric, at 71 for this year. And I certainly don't want us to say, at least here, the purveyors, I know we recognize the importance of staying within the bounds of what the basin can safely produce. And I think we identified a different number. And so 71 is definitely not it. It would be 84 if we were using the new number. So I just want to say, I, for one, recognize that is a disparity compared to what we had last year. The water levels, I think that's an important thing too. I mean, there are several metrics that I know we're reviewing those. It is promising to see our nitrate level go down. There's more work to do, and I think Golden State and S&T have some ideas on how we can collaborate on that. The water level is an important metric, and if we're not consistent in how we apply that logic, that is absolutely something I want to see worked out for our next set of basin metrics, and how we identify them and how we measure them. Seawater intrusion. I'm really, honestly, I would love to know how we have an alternate interpretation of what seawater intrusion or any of that is, because why do we have so many people saying we're not experiencing seawater intrusion? What is the other interpretation of an increasing amount of chloride in our basin every year? I would love to know. If anyone can answer that, I'm putting it out to everyone, please. Just humor me and give me an answer, because I don't understand what other data or information is going into the statements that we seem to hear on a pretty regular basis. So other than that, I think those are just my high level comments. And then my one question related to the ag users.
Okay, thank you.
I always like to see simple questions answered if you can. The more information we can put out as soon as possible, the better. Appreciate the written comments from Lynette always. Got to pay attention to those. But I like your comments too. Thank you.
Okay. Spencer, can you answer that question about the ag production?
Good afternoon, Spencer Harris. So the ag estimates are based on a soil moisture budget, which tracks the water in the soil, and it introduces water from precipitation, and then it extracts water that the plant needs, and the remaining water either percolates down into the basin or it runs off. So the data that we use for the soil moisture budget, and this is what creates the 470 that you're seeing that we've used in prior years. There's evapotranspiration that is from Simis Station in the Choro Valley, and that's a reference ET, which is based on turf grass. And then we use crop coefficients to translate what turf grass would use to what the vegetables and the other ag uses are in Los Osos. And so once those requirements, the demand requirements of the plants are input into the soil moisture budget, then we add the precipitation. The precipitation is a daily data input, and it comes from the landfill station, which is in the Creek Valley or adjacent to the Creek Valley. So that's close. And so how the way you end up with what the total irrigation demand is you figure out what the plants need and what effective precipitation is there, and then the balance needs to be provided by the grower. And then there's a certain amount of efficiency and additional inputs that create the final value. So, but the main difference here is that the evapotranspiration requirements for the plants were lower in 2025 calendar year based on the information from the Simis Station in the Choro Valley. Precipitation calendar year, as was noted, is fairly similar to last year's, and acreages are fairly similar. So that was the main reason for the reduction. Now, the satellite imagery and methodology is also presented in Appendix G. It's a separate section. And so what that does is, instead of taking the evapotranspiration data from the Choro Valley and then converting it to the crops that are grown in Los Osos, we use the satellite imagery, which gives us, or it's interpreted to provide what it's an energy balance methodology that tells you how much water is being evaporated off specific fields. So it's very, very specific to location. And we can use that to understand what the total water consumption is of the field. And then we still have to offset precipitation. There's still effective precipitation, which is still using a soil moisture budget. So the difference is really what the crop demand is based on. And then the same methodology is used to adjust for precipitation. And that does result in a lower numbers, 417 or close to that. So ultimately, it's an estimate, and I think it would be helpful if we had some growers that would participate in some kind of, ground truthing study where they would allow meters, and we would be able to really merge what we're doing with what they're doing. Because, vegetables is a fairly complex operation. Yeah.
But if I might, at the same time, the evapotranspiration satellite data has been ground truth. It's used all over the state to get Sigma compliance. It's an accepted standard practice of estimating consumptive water use.
Thank you, Spencer. I think you answered my question.
Thank you, Spencer. So the process, I'd like to see that, as you mentioned, to memorialize these questions and go back through them and pick out the ones that are specific to the annual report, right? Because I think there was a lot of mixing in there of other projects and future work that we need to do. Yep. Okay.
And then we're back on the 17th of June for approval of the annual report.
Right. Okay. We'll go ahead and close. Any further direction, Dan, you need from us before we close this item?
No, I think that's sufficient for us to,
Okay.
do our work and bring it back to you on June 17th.
Okay. We'll go to our second action item, B, approval of the 2025 annual operating budget closeout.
Yes. This is a relatively minor item, I think, in the scheme of things compared to what we just went through. Since adoption of a bank account for the BMC in 2024, we've modified our accounting procedures. We've created the ability to roll funds over year if we come in under our budget. We've established a reserve target policy of 10% of our annual budget. And just long story short, as the board knows, 2025 was a very high level of effort year. We used quite a bit of funding to pay for the transient model, the water recycling funding study, additional executive director staff time to coordinate a lot of meetings. And so we spent a good amount of our budget for that year, as well as the reserves that we had generated from the previous year. But we still do have some funding available to roll over into the year 2026. We add it all up, it's at approximately $21,000. And our recommendation is to roll that funding over, meaning we don't distribute it back to the BMC parties, as we've got a significant infrastructure project upcoming with the Sweet Springs monitoring well. And I think it also falls under our reserve target that we're trying to maintain anyway. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan? Comments? I think I've kind of expressed it before. I'm not a fan of this rollover and slush fund it seems to just dissolve into other projects running over, and there's just less accountability on some of our projects. But in the spirit of things, it's not a large sum. But I do, it's not my favorite approach. I'll just leave it at that.
I think you do a pretty good job, though, of accounting for it all and keeping
Yeah.
it straight on how it's being spent. So that's
something.
Yeah, that's everything.
nothing.
As long as you're using it on things that
Yeah.
within our purview.
Yeah.
I haven't seen dominoes on there yet.
We'll go to public comment on this item B, 9B.
If you would like to make a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you are online, please raise your hand and we will take any public comments in the boardroom first. There is no public comment in the boardroom or online, so we can take it back to the board.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, we'll go ahead and close 9B. Move to item 10, relatively new item on our agenda to have future items talked about. So I'm glad to see it here. I think it's good for us to do that. One of we talked about some future items already, and I did kind of capture the list and dates that we talked about of our future items. So maybe that could be added into this section when we come back next time.
In the executive director's report, you think?
Well, if they are going to be new items, we add them here. Yeah. And if they're not already an ongoing item in the executive report, yeah. Any questions or comments on this section? Any future items you want to add?
I think there's a lot of them that are going to wind up there. You mentioned in the director's report, but I like the idea of a separate little bullet point, calling them out so people know what to expect from us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And among, go ahead.
No, and when.
And when. Yeah. And, we talked about the one I'm interested in is obviously progress toward the reoptimization of the pumping patterns. And, the first thing is to establish a timeline and what projects need to be executed. I think another one that would be interesting would be at a point when the CSD is at a good part in their state water project. I think a little detail about that and next steps of that and how this committee could aid in that. I mean, I think it stands always. I've indicated to the LOCSD since it started that I stand by ready to help, bring whatever resources the county can muster to help get that pushed over and make it a reality. So, with new management at the CSD, just reiterate that, but to hear where they are and where they think the important next steps are would be really important.
Yep.
Interesting.
Sounds good.
Just two things for me. One, I would like to know, I know we kind of talked about the update to the metrics. If we could kind of get a tentative schedule of what the rollout on that. I know it sounds like Spencer's already kind of got an idea of what he's going to put out there. The Basin plan update, I don't know when that's going to fall into all this, but I know that's kind of out there. And then, I think, I don't know if there's a place already within the Basin report that Dan puts out, but would it be possible to get more of a, I guess, granular technical look at what is going on to Broderson and if there are technical issues that are maybe preventing it, or if maybe if Spencer has more information about the transducer data, like what really is happening month to month out there? Because it just seems like it comes up every year in the annual report. It's a huge part of our Basin plan as far as a program goes. It would be nice to know exactly what is going on. That's, I think, basically it for me.
Okay. Thank you. We will go to public comment on future items.
If you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand. We will take any public comments in the boardroom first.
Good afternoon, Barry Brannon. I'm a farmer in the Osos Valley. Been listening to this, it sounds like we're rearranging the deck chairs. I don't see any change as far as getting any new water. The only way Los Osos is ever going to be sustainable is you've got to get some new water. The most obvious things is stormwater capture. When Mr. Munns was at the county, my neighbor, Mr. Goodrich, and I, together we own about 900 acres in Los Osos Valley, and Warden Creek runs right through both of our properties. And if you look on the Google map, Warden Lake itself is on my property. And so we, Mr. Goodrich put together a pretty good summary. And when you get the normal rains, about 3 times the amount of water that Los Osos uses is spilled every year down Warden Creek, 3 to 4 times. Now, my south property line is the north property line of the wastewater treatment plant. And I run from the wastewater treatment plant all the way to Turry Road. So when I walk it, I know the property. A very simple earthen berm about the midpoint of Warden Lake with the proper overspills and so on would allow you to capture peak stormwater runoff in the wintertime. A couple of years ago, we had so much water that we had a drone come over and take a picture of how much flooding there was in my land. It was tremendous. Warden Lake just exploded its size. So the point is, if you had a stormwater capture in Warden Lake, it's about 100 yards from that point to the wastewater treatment plant. So the simple concept to me as an engineer, when you get this peak flow, you capture it in the wintertime. You bring a suction pipe from the plant, you bring the stormwater in, you blend it into the sewer plant, and then when you get that new water, that surge of new water of 1,000 acre feet or whatever, it doesn't happen very often, but 2 years ago, we had 2 years in a row that we had water over the back of my cows. So there needs to be, you talk about new projects, new water needs to come to Los Osos. You're talking about a pipeline coming from the state water. You're going to get a lot of pushback from Morro Bay because Morro Bay paid for the pipeline that brings the water to Morro Bay. If you try to grab it from the pipe that comes from the lake in Cayucas, you're going to have pushback there. Stormwater capture is a way to get new water to Los Osos that needs to be explored, and I'm sad to see that that's not being looked at. Thank you.
Becky McFarland. Thank you, Mr. Brannon. I had the pleasure of touring his property for about an hour and a half one day. It's amazing. Those of us that have been here in a long time have seen Warden Lake go all the way to Turry Road. You see it right there in the fields on Los Osos Valley Road. We're spending all this money for this intertie for iffy water. And then 10 million, which will probably end up being 20 million, if that water was put to capturing our water here, instead of relying on water that comes from Lake Oroville and the Feather River water basin. I mean, we're taking water from the Delta too. So I'm all for using the resources we have. And what's it going to take to get a study? What's it going to take for people to listen to people like Mr. Brannon? Because it makes so much sense. The pipeline doesn't make sense. And I've mentioned before, I took a hydrology and groundwater sustainability short course through Davis and learned all about the State Water Project, and they have problems. It's oversubscribed to. And so we need to do something there. So how is that going to get put on? Let's make that an agenda item. Let's talk about it. Let's find some money for something like that. Ventura County got some huge grant to do stormwater capture along one of the rivers. And that was a few years ago. Why aren't we doing it here? We've got tons of water running down our streets, through people's backyards, through their garages, and then into the other. That's what our stormwater system is here in Los Osos. There isn't one. Let's do that first before we charge more money to people that are barely making it now. I'd like to stay here. I was up in Tehama County looking at properties where I can buy 2 houses, have my own well, and they have water problems. I don't want to leave here. I think I'm a valuable member of this community. I'm friendly. I help look out for things. I helped clear off Palisades Avenue. We don't have that huge homeless problem anymore. So do you want to drive out people like me and my family? And people that have this history here? It's so valuable to keep a community intact. And then, here we've got a willing person and his neighbor with the property to do this right below the wastewater plant. It can be done. I mean, we're not stupid people in this country. We can innovate like anything. Let's figure out how to do that. We've got Cal Poly down the road. Can we utilize them? But let's do something that makes sense for once in this town, because I haven't seen a lot of that. I know people have really tried, but let's do, what did it say? Do it right this time. Thank you.
There are no further public comments in the boardroom, but there is one online. Emily, all you have to do is unmute yourself.
Hi there, Emily. And maybe you want to agendize after 5 years of me saying ag pre-competitive sustainability metrics and reporting standards. I don't know, might have worked with like $2 trillion in demand in specialty crops and salad bowls, et cetera. There's funding available to work with students at Cal Poly and other universities with farmers pre-competitively to measure the impact not only of water use, but many other important things like nitrate inputs. And, not necessarily expose or share the data, but help agriculture lower their footprint. And sometimes that gives businesses, farmers, a advantage with contracts, especially in big retail, that reports publicly on such metrics. Thank you.
There is no further public comment in the boardroom or online, so we'll take it back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the comments, and they're noted. Any further discussion on this?
I will foot stomp the stormwater recharge study if that is ever in our future. I think it's a huge lost resource in Los Osos.
Developing a list. The list is getting long, which is good. We want it out in front of us. We want to know what the options are. All right. We'll go ahead and close item 10 and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Have a good day.
You're on Rodney. Yeah, I'm on Travis. Oh. Right above where it turns to go up. We're on the bottom. Yep, we're on the bottom of the line. Oh, yeah.